Hello, everyone. How are you doing? This is Daryl Guberman, CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, a quality consulting firm here in Connecticut. We're just going to go right into this video. This video today is now the DOJ is looking into the Boeing door plug blowout on the Alaska airline. ANSI board member corrupts investigation. Yes, the DOJ sits on ANSI ANAB's board as a member. We will show this to you. Also, the FBI, they sit on there. So it is corrupted. A very well-written article came out, a featured article concerning my exposure of Boeing and the FAA and Boeing, how the FAA gave regulatory authority to Boeing from 2009 to present, which means that they were the FAA. So that means when David Calhoun took over the CEO position from Dennis Muhlenberg, he became automatically an FAA administrator because Boeing is an FAA regulator. I'm going to prove this to you and I'm going to show it to you. There was a very good article that just came out. It's FAA chief vows to hold FAA regulator Boeing 2009 to present accountable for safety violations. That's in the European magazine. Please look it up. You'll find all the data there, all the useful data. And once again, this video today is now the DOJ is looking into the Boeing door plug blowout. ANSI ANAB member corrupts investigation, and it does. And here we go. The American National Standards Institute is a private, not-for-profit, non-governmental corporation that has both federal agencies and corporations on board. They've been around for over 100 years. You have the American National Accrediting Board that sits on ANSI's board, okay, right over by companies like Boeing, who shove this accreditation body down their supplier's throat. Boeing also sits on their board, both ANSI and ANAB. They sat on ANSI ANAB's board. The director, the board of directors, which means that they guide the accreditation body that they're utilizing and shoving down suppliers' throats. And also, they sit on Boeing's board of management that could grant, suspend, and withdraw certification. We've seen how well that's gone over. We're going to continue on. In 2018, ANSI took over complete control over ANAB in 2018, and in between 2015 and 21, the International Accreditation Forum, which is a repository for both national and international accreditation bodies, was watched over by a communist Chinese national as a chairman on an American company incorporated in Delaware, no less. Who sits on there? The FBI, DOJ, DOT, FAA, FDA, et cetera, et cetera. And there are corporations like Lockheed, Boeing. You have Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson that sit on board. A lot of them skip quality processes. We're not going to, we want to save that for another video. But regardless, you have ANSI ANAB. They've been watched over by Communist China between 2015 and 21. And it also corrupts and taints the factor that the gentleman who took it over, Zhao Jinwu, a communist Chinese national, is mandated to take our data through the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7. Also, I just want to let you know that I was invited to join. First I gave a speech at the American Society for Quality in 2013, and Mr. David Levy said, Mr. Guberman, ANAB has no problem with what you're doing. We're supporting you because I believe in competition. I don't believe in this monopoly that Boeing sits on the board of their accreditation body, and they also mandate the board, okay, the accreditation body that they sit on. And we're going to get into it deeper, too, because you're not going to believe this. So we got 50% of attaboy because ASQ at the time, American Society for Quality in 2013, owned 50% of ANAB, American National Accrediting Board. The other half was owned by the American National Standards Institute. So in 2016, a Mr. Randy Doty, who at one time between 2009 and 15 was the vice president of ANAB and the chairman and also the principal on the IAF tax report. He had complete control over both bodies, ANAB and also the IAF. Okay, and by the way, ANSI ANAB are underwriters, which means they take full legal responsibility for these rejections and all this stuff, full legal responsibility. They are underwriters for the IAF, incorporated in Delaware, and also the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation in Australia. We fondly call them now, their acronyms, The IAF is it always fails, and ILAC is laboratory accreditation credible? We're going to continue on. You have Boeing. Boeing sits on ANSI's board. Right over by, as I said, right over by the accreditation body that they shoved down their suppliers' throats. Okay, when I first started this business, wanting competition, and by the way, in 2016, Randy invited us to join as the ANAB technical advisor. So we got 50% approval from ASQ. In 2016, we were asked by Randy to join either ANAB, IAF, or both. But how, as a proud American, could I join that organization when, as you see, ANSI and ANAB sit on the IAF, and the IAF was controlled by a communist Chinese national? I'm a proud American. Those people who maintain an ANSI ANAB certificate, God rest your soul. Here it is. Boeing uses the accreditation body. They sit on the board of the accreditation body, and just wait, it gets better. In 2002, Boeing came out with a supplier bulletin that stated this: on-site Boeing survey of suppliers' quality system if need be. Our preference is to deal with proven suppliers with excellent quality performance and not to have to do on-site quality surveys or audits. Basically, what this is saying, I broke it down for you, ladies and gentlemen, business owners, my fellow citizens. It says this: you have an AS9100 certificate. You see the plane going down? They basically said this: suppliers, send in your AS9100 certificate, accredited by ANAB, partners of failure, of course, and also they sit on the IAF. I told you that, business owners, my fellow citizens. Send us your AS9100 certificate. It's an international standard. Send us your parts, and Boeing discharges any sort of obligation to go and inspect their suppliers. Do you see that? In 2009, it gets a little bit more sticky. The FAA gave regulatory authority to Boeing. And in a most recent article, the FAA is giving their FAA regulator, Boeing, 90 days to get their quality in line. It took them 22 years of sending parts in without any sort of verification by Boeing other than a piece of paper for parts. Okay, send in your parts. Well, first, send in your certificate, ANSI ANAB accredited, then send in your parts. We don't have to send an inspector to your facility. And then they come out with, the FAA says, we're going to make you into a regulator. So, a regulator watching over a regulator, now they're giving the regulator a problem. Can a regulator regulate over a regulator? Anyway, and then people talk about the MCAS system. Oh, Ethiopian Air, all the rest of that. In fact, I have a letter right over here. I have a letter from December of 2022, right? 2022. So at that time, for 20 years, they have been shipping in parts just with a verification of a certificate. They've been shipping in parts to Boeing. But this is the funniest part. Now, I showed you that they're a regulator, and it gets even better. Before I read you that little tiny yellow part of this letter, it states, the system allows Boeing employees to perform tasks on behalf of the FAA that include oversight of testing and product standards, along with certification of aircraft technologies and new aircraft designs. That's the MCAS system, where it says aircraft technologies, along with certification of aircraft technologies. That's the MCAS system. So when I read this bullshit letter, and it is, who's this by? Who the hell knows? Victims and families. I apologize, it was probably written by a lawyer. But this is what it says. After the ET-302 crash, I think that's Ethiopian Air, crash of Boeing MAX 8 occurred on March 10, 2019, the world learned about Boeing's fraud on the FAA relating to the MCAS system, Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. Well, let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, of that crash, and please, my heart goes out to you, for you as well as Indonesia, etc. The FAA made them into a regulator. They didn't have to tell the FAA anything. Okay? And that's the bottom line. You also have the factor sitting on their supplier portal. They mandate ANSI ANAB or internationally equivalent, which could be Iran and Pakistan and anybody else who sits on the IAF of, the South African Accreditation Cooperation, which has several conflict mineral states on board. Isn't that a tender moment for those people who own ITAR certification? You also have the factor that, as I said, the FAA sits on the ANSI's board. And here you go. As an FAA regulator, they more than likely learned it from the FAA, there you go. They were fudging documentation, skipping processes, most recently $8.1 million fine from the DOJ that stated that in their composite facility in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, for their Boeing Bell composite facility, they were, not taking down proper measurements for their autoclave operation. And when it comes to composite parts, you may have ply separation and failure of the aircraft if it's a critical part. Even if it's not critical, you'll still have separation of the part if it wasn't cured properly, or time and temperature, etc. But here it is. As an FAA regulator, they were fudging documentation, and fudging the documentation from 2007 to 18. So now we get to the Department of Justice. Who sits on there? The Department of Justice, and now they're looking into Boeing. But listen to me, ladies and gentlemen, I contacted the Department of Justice. You think they're going to do anything? They sit right over by Boeing. The next one, and this is very funny, this is comical and sad. You have the FBI who sits there right over by Boeing and Department of Transportation, etc. But I'm going to tell you this. Christopher Wray got up last November, 2022, I think, or 2023, and he said that we must maintain vigilance over communist China. It's going to be the destruction of the United States. Well, let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. His organization was sitting on ANSI between 2015 and 21 while they were being watched over by China. Does Christopher Wray know anything? Absolutely not. My telephone number is 203-556-1493 or Daryl, tqrs@yahoo.com. Now the DOJ is looking into the Boeing door plug blowout, an ANSI board member, which corrupts the investigation. Do you see how it corrupts the investigation, ladies and gentlemen? The factor that the Department of Justice sits on ANSI's board right over by Boeing. 203-556-1493 or Daryl, tqrs@yahoo.com. I thank you.